This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. The Mayo Clinic. You hear that name, and the first thing that comes to mind for many of us is research. For those of us that have family members that have experienced seemingly insurmountable odds when it comes to diseases, you see them as a bit of a salvation because they have turned lives around. They have given hope where hope did not previously exist, at least in the sense of extending someone's life. Today, though, we're going to talk about a young woman who was an employee of the Mayo Clinic who died tragically, and her life ended as she was in the midst of pursuing a graduate degree in one of my favorite areas of study, which is public health. She didn't get to see the end, the success of that great academic achievement. Instead, her death came about at the hands of someone who at one time she trusted, and then that individual took her and discarded her as if she meant nothing. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. You know, Dave, in medical legal death investigation, a big part of our job is processing information, not just for the courts, not just for police, but also for public health. We spend, arguably, I could say that in my world, we actually spend as much time gleaning data relative to end-of-life circumstances as we do studying homicides and trauma and that sort of thing. You know, because most of the deaths that you handle at a coroner or medical examiner's office are not traumatically related. They're certainly not all homicides. The lion's share of deaths are natural. And so, having worked in Atlanta for over a decade, the CDC is actually in Atlanta. It's technically, in DeKalb County, but it's immediately adjacent to Atlanta. So we would have their personnel that would come over and grab data from us pretty regularly. We would see them come in and out, and we had a really good working relationship with them. And when it comes to this poor woman whose life ended at the hands of an individual that cared not for her any longer, and I'm talking about Maddie Kingsbury, that was her life's work. That's what she had decided to study. That's what she was looking to expand her career into. She's working on a master's degree in public health. And it's those people that study things like epidemiology that try to understand diseases and how they impact us, everything from smoking to drinking to origins of cancer to, you name it. It covers a broad spectrum. You can choose to study just about anything that impacts the human condition medically. And this case has touched so many people's lives and it's so very tragic. I think that's probably the last thing that people expected to happen, Dave.
It is an amazing story that I actually have been covering this, Joe, since Madeline Kingsbury went missing. It was mother of two, obviously brilliant based on her educational background and what she was currently doing. And we were looking for her, try to find this woman. And it actually begins where she, you always go, where was the last time somebody saw her and who was with her and all that? We actually have Madeline.
Can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
Forgive me. Did you cover this with Nancy Grace?
Yes.
And did this initially come out as a missing person?
Yeah.
That you guys were working and covering that? Because I know Nancy, she's she's like a dog with a bone. She'll hook into a case like this, and it's all about trying to find the person.
And that's what we were doing. That's why I was on it from the first episode. I was covering it from the beginning. We did it several times with updates, trying to find her, getting out information. Because you have this mother of two. She's 26 years old. She's young, she's brilliant, and she's missing. I mean, so not only do you have a person, but you've got a mom. She's got two small children. Their ages are 5 and 2 years old, and she is missing. And so, we covered it. She actually was seen, Madeline Kingsbury and Adam Fravel. He is the father to her children. They are seen just after 8 a.m. dropping their 5-year-old and 2-year-old off at the daycare. They are together. And I point that out because that wasn't the norm. They didn't always go together to drop the children off at daycare. Also, Madeline Kingsbury, she regularly texted back and forth with her family members. And she was also very quickly. She wasn't one of these people that you would text and hope she got back to you within several hours. She was an immediate retexter. It was a communication that she did. And the last thing that she responded to was at 8:15 that morning. And it was responding to a joke her sister had sent or something, a funny picture or whatever. But it was that lack of contact with family and friends that immediately said something's not quite right.
Right.
So we have Adam Fravel and Madeline Kingsbury with their dropping their children off together at daycare around 8 a.m. At 8:15, Madeline responds to a comedic picture texted to her by her sister. And from that moment on, we know that they got home to their house. There's security cameras showing her car pulling in. She's there at her house. And at 8:15, nothing. She no longer responds to any text messages or answers the phone. And she vanishes. She vanishes off the face of the earth. The father of her children, Adam Fravel, he is seen leaving the house about 10 o'clock that morning, a little after 10. He drives around and police were able to track his whereabouts because of security cameras and phone pings and things like that. And so they know where he went, where he traveled, and when he returned. And he's doing these things out in the open. But again, Madeline Kingsbury is seen going into her house, but never leaving.
Never emerging. Yeah.
Right. So when her family realizes they haven't talked to her, can't get her on the phone, this is so out of the ordinary, they call police. Would you please check on our sister, daughter, and see what's going on? Adam Fravel tells police that he didn't hear from her either. He had run his errands and he came back home and he didn't hear from her. She would normally pick the children up at school, but she wasn't responding to text messages or anything. She didn't show up to pick up the kids. So he went and got the kids and he took the children because he couldn't get up with Madeline. He got the children at daycare and took them to his parents' house and returned back home. So that's where we are with the welfare check. The children are now at Adam's parents' house. Madeline is gone, but her purse, her keys, her phone, her vehicle are at the house. That's when we picked up the story, Joe. That's the first time I started covering it, was with that scenario that I just gave you.
And I know that this happens. It's never happened to me personally. Okay. Mm-hmm. But what an odd dynamic, huh? When you think about that you're no longer going to move forward with a relationship.
Right.
Yet you're still living under the same roof. And listen, I understand times are tough all over.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Financially. And sometimes, you have to be in that space because you need a roof over your head. But it's hard to fathom that someone that that you're not going to move forward with, that you're still occupying that same space. And it's not just a space. It's an intimate home environment. It's your domicile, where you're living with this person, and you're also living there with your children. And I was just thinking about, this idea of her and him dropping the children off together. And that's, you wonder, and I think I thought about this, when we were talking about doing this case. Do you think that there was an attempt at reconciliation on some level, that maybe some seed had been planted? Let's go out and, let's go drop the kids off together, and maybe that there was some kind of indication that maybe, hope springs eternal. I have no idea. And then suddenly something is triggered that pushes this set of circumstances off the rails to the point where she literally vanishes into thin air. And we're not talking about she's vanished and she's taken all the stuff out of the house and she's left. Dude, she's vanished. And everything that she would need to subsist on, even if it was by herself, and I cannot imagine, and I know that it has happened, but I can't imagine, particularly with somebody as precious as Madeline seems like she was, that she would just abandon her kids with no thought and just leave and go, cast caution to the wind. And as we all know, Dave, in all of these circumstances, cases like this, the first person we're going to look at is going to be the intimate partner in a particular case, because it's stranger on stranger crime is so rare when compared to domestic issues, Dave. And of course, there's a lot kind of bubbling beneath the surface here.
And is that what's bubbling underneath the surface that has everyone's attention? I want to share something very quickly, Joe, because as police are called to do the welfare check, they are given information about the relationship because they need to know, what are we walking into?
Yeah.
And they're given information from family and friends about the relationship between Adam Fravel and Madeline Kingsbury. And there's one particular story that is told by a friend of Madeline's. She was holding the youngest baby. She was doing a FaceTime call with a friend of hers. Okay. She's at the house. She's cooking dinner. She has child in one hand and she's on the phone and she's cooking dinner. And the friend relates how Adam Fravel is in the living room area playing a video game. And he comes into the kitchen area and is seen by the person because she's doing the FaceTime call. Adam walks into frame and he's yelling at Madeline to be quiet on the phone because he can't hear his game. And he smacks her in the face. The person on the other end of this FaceTime call sees him hit her in the face and starts putting two and two together on other things she has seen in the past. This is something that is related to police. Eyewitness firsthand account of what they have seen Adam Fravel and Madeline's relationship.
Right.
Violence over a video game.
Yeah.
She's holding their baby and cooking dinner, and he explodes. Police know this as they're talking to Fravel at all times.
Well, one of the chilling things about this is the fact that if a subject will do this in view of another person, particularly when there's a child present, what would they be capable of when no one else is looking?
Friday, Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Think about investigations when you are looking for a missing person and you have them in a location where they live, that is the last place they were seen alive, and then suddenly they vanish into thin air. It is, in fact, like chasing a ghost. You're having to go back and backtrack. And Dave, if I'm not mistaken, this was, a full court press relative to trying to seek out where this poor woman is.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like she was just gone for a short period of time.
Right.
I mean, she disappears, dude, and she is gone, man. She just vaporizes. Can you fill us in a little bit about this?
Well, police start there. They know they got her going in. They have a timetable here, which is kind of fascinating to me because oftentimes we have a guess. Well, when was the last time you saw them? Was it this day or that day? I mean, it can be vague, and it's really important to know, where do we start looking? When do we start looking? Well, in this particular case, we know that her last text message was at 8:15. We know she dropped the children off at 8 o'clock, and she was with Adam Fravel during both of these instances, dropping the children off together and sending the text message, replying back and forth with her sister, Megan. Now, we know they got home because her car is there. Then, from there on out, the story gets weeds. I'll give you an example. This is some information we got from the police department investigators and talking about how she and Megan were replying back and forth to funny pictures and other text messages that Madeline was getting during the course of that day. And, they talk about how it was on a Friday. And while everyone gets busy, even the most text active people have a day where they don't reply as much or as fast as normal. And that's brought into this equation from the messages earlier that day, even though, as I mentioned, she was one of these people that you send her a text, she replied quickly. I'm kind of that person. I try to reply very quickly. And so it's out of character. And they kind of put all this into play, but it's when she didn't pick up the children at daycare. Their 5-year-old Ileana and 2-year-old Noah did not pick her children up from daycare. It's determined that she did not go to work that day. This is important because we know she got home with her van. And according to her boyfriend or the ex, the significant other that had, they were breaking up. But according to Mr. Fravel, she was leaving to go to work that day. She had to go into her office. Right. And where she normally worked at home, she did go in occasionally. And this was the day she was going into the office. He leaves the house and runs errands. When he comes back, she's not there. He says he assumes she's gone to the office, but he can't get her on the phone. She's not replying to texts. That's why he decides to go pick up the children at the daycare. Since he can't get up with her, he takes the children to his parents' house. The chief of police of the Winona Police Department, Tom Wilson, I'm going to give you a direct quote from him because he said, we believe a van, they're tracking the movements of trying to track the movements of Madeline because she's the one missing. We believe a van similar to Maddie's van was driven up County Road 12 and Highway 43 in Winona County, and then southbound on Highway 43 through the eastern part of Fillmore County. Later, a van similar to Maddie's traveled back toward Winona on Highway 43. All this occurred between 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. We believe the van remained parked in the driveway of Maddie's residence from 1:30 p.m. on. We know that Adam Fravel was gone from the house between 10 a.m. and 1:30 because he told them. So now you have Adam Fravel in her van, something he didn't normally drive, in her vehicle, driving around these locations where they've used, just so you know, between cell phone pings or things like that, they've actually used Ring doorbell cameras and things like that, security cameras along the way. And that's why they say a van similar, because they see the van on these security cameras and they know it's her. I mean, they just can't say that. They know it's her van, but they also know it's not her driving the van. So they have this thing going all over the place and they know it's him. So the chief says this: nothing to date has indicated that Maddie left the residence on foot or in another vehicle. It's important, don't you think?
Yeah, it truly is, because how does she just vaporize? And we're talking about a pretty big geographic area. And so everybody knows Winona County is due south of what they refer to as the Twin Cities in Minnesota. So, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and it's kind of a rural area out there. It's the population density is nothing like Hennepin County, where Minneapolis, St. Paul is. And interestingly enough, for those that don't know, Winona County and the county seat, Winona, is where Winona Ryder gets her name from, because she was born there. And so you've got this town that they lived in. It's a beautiful little town. It sits literally right on the Mississippi River. So it's right on the state border up there. And in a beautiful area. Minnesota is a gorgeous place if you've never been there. And so you've got it's a huge geographic area, a lot of unimproved roads, gravel roads, these sorts of things, farming communities, that sort of thing. So it's not just so simple as to say, well, we know that she's going to be specifically in this location, because once you start to get outside of that ring kind of dovetailing, which is ring cams, but you get outside of that ring of CCTV coverage, that sort of thing, you're kind of, walking around in the dark without a cane at that point in time. So you can have as many eyes on this thing as you want to have on it, Dave, but when you have a vast area like this, there's no way to kind of pin it down. I think that we take comfort to a certain degree regarding the amount of technology that kind of indwells and intertwines in our life, but there are no guarantees, that we're going to be able to track anybody down whatsoever. And in a case like this, the important person to be tracking is going to be the ex-boyfriend, where are his movements? Because when it comes down to it, he's the last known point of contact. You remember you said just a moment ago, they got back home, she goes in, he comes out, and she's never to be seen again, Dave.
Right. And that's the part that the police point out early on. Police are cagey like this. They say things that let the perpetrator know that they need to be worried, because if you push somebody into a stressful situation, they can mess things up. They can say the wrong thing, change their story. And so police are not saying, hey, he did something to her. They're merely pointing out basic facts that we saw her. We know she went in. We know that he left. He's gone between 10 and 1:30. Her car never moves again after 1:30, and she's never seen leaving the house. We know she did not leave on her own. So this is what the officer talked about after that. He says, nothing indicates that Maddie left the residence on foot or in another vehicle. And he says, nothing to date, meaning up to this moment, we got nothing. The public has asked if we are currently looking for the van. We are not. Investigators have searched the van and the residence. Inside the residence, investigators located Maddie's phone, the jacket she had been wearing earlier in the morning, along with her wallet and ID. Maddie's family and friends tried to contact Maddie throughout the day on March 31st without success. It was unlike her not to respond. Based on all of this, we believe Maddie's disappearance is involuntary, suspicious, and we are all concerned for her safety.
Well, let me back up here just one second. Well, first off, who walks out of the house without their personal belongings, and who in the hell walks out of their house in Minnesota on March 31st without their jacket.
Right.
Because I don't know much, being an old Southern guy. I do know this. Minnesota's cold, and particularly that time of year, it's still very cold. And if that's her favorite jacket that she wears on a regular basis, you know what? I guess she could have changed jackets, or perhaps, but you know, they make an issue of the fact that she walked in clothed in that jacket. We know that she left in that jacket to drop the kids off, but she leaves that behind. I think that's important, because you know, when you're kind of gauging one of these things, you're thinking about health and welfare, right? They are suspicious, because it's not just that they're thinking that maybe something nefarious has happened, you know, like a homicide. They're thinking, well, what if she's having a mental health crisis?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she wanders away from the house, because people do that. You know, they don't have a sense of you know, being uncomfortable at that point because they're so distressed. They might have an awareness later on, but they could walk out of the house without a jacket on.
Mm-hmm.
But as an investigator, that's a significant piece of information.
And police say early on, we believe she's in danger. We believe she did not leave on her own. I think that's a really important part of the entire story of all of this, is her disappearance is involuntary and suspicious. Because this is all we know, Joe. This right here, all the searches that follow after this, we're talking family and friends, everybody pointing out this is a very smart, beautiful mom. She's a woman who, I mean, you look at how she's described, and it's like I'm looking at pictures of her to see if I can see the angel wings. This is a person that is very highly thought of. And people truly care about her because of the type of individual she is. And all of them are concerned because they know who Adam Fravel is. They know they've seen the domestic violence. They know they have seen this man. You mentioned it a minute ago. Somebody that would smack her and talk to her in such a way while she's on the phone with a friend shows you a lack of self-control and a violent tendency that he thinks it's okay to show this side of him to somebody else. It's a crazy control thing, I guess. I'm not sure. But right away, they knew he's a problem. He is a big problem. He's got a documented history of domestic violence against Kingsbury, including there was an incident where he actually struck her, you know, while on that video phone call that is documented by the friend, and the police have all that information I was telling you about earlier. So they already know all of this about Adam Fravel, and they know he's the last person with her. They know he took off in her vehicle and drove all around this area. So they can't find Madeline. Again, a mother of two who's all about her children, and they know she's dead at this point. They're not stupid. They just have to prove it. But they got to find her first.
And you know, Dave, that's the most ominous piece of all. The police know that something horrible has occurred involving Madeline, perhaps the loss of her life. But the big question is, how are they going to find her? Can they find her in time? But as it turns out, it would be months before they ever laid eyes on Madeline again.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Madeline.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You know, Dave, my wife, when we used to live up in the North Georgia mountains, that's where I had my first academic appointment, lived up there for about a decade. And I had an old truck. And when we first moved up there, I was keen to try to figure out where roads go. And it would unnerve her, particularly up in the mountains, because you don't know where they're going to go. But I like taking just old dirt roads. And you're really in a very difficult position when you get down some of these roads and the road might be washed out, or you have to go through a stream in order to cross to the other side. And then when you get to the other side, you don't know where you're going to wind up. And of course, cell service never works up there. But when you see a gravel road, many times, for me at least, it piques my curiosity. I want to know what's down that road. Dave, they've been looking for Madeline now for months and months, and she has not turned up. It was not until June the 7th. Now we have to back up and remember, she went missing on March 31st. The last day of March, she goes missing, and she is now found. She's finally found on June 7th, 2023. And of course, by this time, I think that most people had come to the conclusion that this was not going to end well. And I think their worst fears were realized.
There was a deputy walking along Highway 43. He starts looking in this area. They know Adam's family has connections to the exact place where this deputy is looking. And that's how he comes across what he believes to be the body of Madeline Kingsbury. We're talking 2 months after she goes missing.
Yeah. And change, actually a little bit longer.
And by the way, it's not her body laying in a ditch, okay? It's not her bare body. You actually have her body in a cocoon, going back to the cocoon, being wrapped up.
Yeah, and not just wrapped up, but sequestered in a culvert. And I was talking about the gravel road just a moment ago that, I so love driving down and trying to figure out where they go. That's where she was found. So when you find a body that is obscured inside of, like, say, for instance, a culvert, and for those of you that don't know what a culvert is, a big concrete tube that literally goes, like if you turn off of a road, perhaps you're going over a ditch, the culvert most of the time will run beneath that intersection where you're driving onto the addition into the attached road, and it allows for the flow of water. Well, her body is taped inside of a gray fitted sheet, Dave, and it's taped with Gorilla Tape, which turns out to be very important in this case.
Very, and the fitted sheet.
Yeah, and the fitted sheet, and she's hidden. I'm not going to say that it is the same as burial, but it's pretty doggone close, because what you're trying to do is to obscure the body to keep it out of view. I think one of my questions would be, why would you go to this degree to hide a body, but yet not really truly finish the job? Because if you have access to this much property, okay, there's any number of locations you could have probably have gone in order to bury the body. However, what are we dealing here with, Dave? We're dealing with time. Remember, he has to get back in time to get the kids from daycare. Now, did he leave again in this period of time after his mom and dad had the kids, and then she's dead in the house? He wraps her up, prepares the body, scratching his head, wondering where in the world where could I deposit the body where no one is going to find it? Well, Fravel's got knowledge of this area. He's been there before. Trust me. His dad manages the property. It's not like he's a stranger to it.
Right.
And he's thinking, wow, how could I make this quick and dirty? And so, I gotta say, it worked for a while. It worked for a few weeks, but in the end, this deputy that was doing a very thorough search out there at the scene, and I can imagine, I've been in these circumstances before. He pulls out his flashlight, probably. He sees a culvert that's not very well illuminated, even in the middle of the day. You have to strain hard to see what's in there. Can you imagine his shock and surprise when he shines that light and he sees this formation in the dark, that's suddenly illuminated, and you have there's this reckoning that comes about in your mind, and you realize, oh my gosh, that looks like a shrouded body that's in there. And then you've got this body in this protected space. I don't, and the body would be at this period of time. Again, we have to think about time and temperature. Okay. The amount of time she's been out there. We know that Minnesota is a very cold place, even in the springtime, but we're heading into summer now, Dave. And this is not like the last time she was seen, it was in the heart of winter. Probably it generally, we move from winter to spring, generally around the 20th or the 21st, 22nd of March, correct? And then go into April, the end of March into April. And we're now into spring. So now you're heading into summer now. We're just a few days away. It would be summer probably in another 13 days. So I don't know how much you're going to be able to find on the body. However, what's very important here, again, back to this idea of cocooning, the body is contained in this fitted sheet with the elastic edges. And so you're providing a space in there where you're going to contain any elements that are in there that might hold answers for you, Dave.
Fascinating. I mentioned the fitted sheet came into play here. Well, when officers had been inside the home looking for Madeline Kingsbury, they actually saw furniture and they saw other sheets that matched that fitted sheet. They saw a mattress that was missing a fitted sheet. And think about this. We all have, most of us have a set of sheets. You got your fitted sheet, you've got your pillowcases, and you've got your other sheet that goes on before you put whatever. And that's what they saw inside. They had firsthand eyesight knowledge. We have this particular sheet, color, all of that, but we're missing the fitted sheet from this mattress that we see over here. Now they find, and by the way, also, there's a roll of Gorilla Tape next to the same area where the fitted sheet and mattress would have been. And what do we find on the fitted sheet that is actually wrapped around Madeline Kingsbury's body, but Gorilla Tape? And the Gorilla Tape matches the Gorilla Tape roll they find next to the other sheets that remained in the house. Granted, a lot of us have Gorilla Tape, but when you start stacking up the odds here, we know that, or believe that, Madeline Kingsbury went into that home and never left on her own, that she was killed there, wrapped up in her own fitted sheet, and that Gorilla Tape was used to tape it up before she was taken out and gotten rid of.
Yeah, and, with tape, for instance, even if you have, it all depends on how the edges are torn, because many times with tape, if you have the original roll, remember they found the roll in their residence. It is possible actually to marry up those edges. That goes to our friends in Toolmark and Trace Evidence.
That did not occur to me, Joe.
Yeah, where you can see if it's torn, and if it's cut, you can actually appreciate to a certain degree microscopically how was it cut. And many people, if you don't have a box cutter, for instance, or even a knife, I don't know, I'm guilty of it. I use my teeth, to tear the edge of it and then just kind of rip it. And when you rip it, depending upon how you catch it, you can leave kind of a jagged edge there. Well, and even if it's a clean tear, many times it might appear clean to the unaided eye, but when you examine it microscopically, you can actually marry this up like a puzzle piece. So it's painstaking, and also you have to, if the original roll of tape is in the house, it's been protected, right? Well, we have to think about the tape that's on the body. That hasn't been protected. Has it been compromised to the point where that analysis did not take place? But either way, Dave, I got to introduce our friends to somebody here, because arguably, out of all the people in the United States, out of all of the forensic pathologists in the United States that could have had anything to have done with the examination of Madeline's remains, I would say that this forensic pathologist he's legend. I mean, in our world, Ross Zumwalt he has trained more forensic pathologists than I can count. over the years. He had been previously the chief medical examiner for the state of New Mexico. And you might say, New Mexico? Yeah, well, they had a very robust forensic fellowship pathology program, forensic pathology program there. And a lot of big names have come out of that program. And then on top of that, Dr. Zumwalt has now become the chief medical examiner, or one of the medical examiners down in this southeastern region of Minnesota. And it happened to be in his jurisdiction. So the assessment that would have been conducted on Madeline's remains, and remember, they received this cocooned body at the ME's office. Dr. Zumwalt would have done the most thorough job possibly in assessing, and not just assessing the remains contained within the shroud, but also the shroud itself, or this, I'm calling it a shroud, but the fitted sheet. Knowing him, he would, and I've met Dr. Zumwalt on at least 2 occasions. Incredibly nice man, and just have you ever been around someone where you're listening to them and you just know they're brilliant? And that's the kind of person he is. You know, he just kind of exudes this. I've heard him give speeches and that sort of thing, and you can see that evidenced in the students he's produced over the years. So they were very fortunate to have him on this case, but unfortunately, because of the time that has elapsed here, Madeline's body has been compromised through decomposition. So to say that it is difficult to make an assessment as to cause of death here is kind of an understatement, because there's no glaring trauma that's visible. And in the morgue, you know, we kind of sit around and you're relying upon many times circumstantial evidence to kind of drive your thought process as to a determination of cause. And in Madeline's case, they concluded that her cause of death was simply homicidal violence, and her death was ruled as a homicide. I think probably logically the way you arrive at that set of circumstances, why else or how else could someone come to be shrouded, taped, sequestered in a culvert in an isolated area without this being homicide? She certainly didn't do this to herself. And just like Magic 8 Ball says, all signs point to him. And so I'm thinking that that's the conclusion that he arrived at. Now, I've heard, interestingly enough, that her cause of death might actually rest in the idea that this is some kind of asphyxial death, perhaps. Maybe a suffocation, perhaps. Smothering, perhaps. Is this plausible? Is it possible? Well, this goes back to an earlier narrative. Do you remember what I said about them traveling to drop the kids off together?
Yeah.
What if there was some kind of offer made to try to reconcile and it was rejected? What if they had been laying in bed next to each other, and suddenly he was rejected by this offer? I have no way of proving this.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know precisely what went on. Rage ensued, and he decides at that last moment to end this precious life and to leave 2 children without a mother, to leave a life unfinished. Here's another bit of tragedy, too, along with this. With everything that Madeline was involved with in her life, in her proposed studies and research, there's no telling, Dave, what she would have uncovered as an epidemiologist perhaps in the future that could have led to, I don't know, discovery of maybe a cure for something out there, patterns that you look for in public health. We'll never know the answer to that. But what we do know is that Adam Fravel has now been convicted of second-degree homicide in the case of Madeline. And he will be cooling his heels in the Minnesota State Penitentiary. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.